Yeah, for most stuff, I would say it's okay to do a little bit every now and then if you want to. But with gluten, it's really black or white, like it's all or none. And unfortunately, the reason for that is because gluten it stimulates antibody production in your blood. So even if you have the smallest possible taste in some kind of sauce that contains gluten, it's going to trigger an immune response, and those antibodies have been shown to stick around in your blood for 4 to 6 months. So let's say you're going gluten free for an entire month, and then all of a sudden you say, you know what, I'm going to give myself a day off today, and you have a bagel or you have a bite of toast. You've now set yourself back for about 4 to 6 months, and obviously that's not the best news for that people
Right.
want to hear, but it's important to understand that that's what's happening. So it's really what I suggest people at least start doing is kind of starting with what you talked about, where it's kind of like 6 days or 5 days or whatever it is, and then allowing yourself to have a little treat every now and then, just so you can experience the difference. And then when you're ready to really take it to the next level and you've looked at some alternatives and some options other than bread or other than wheat, then you can say, you know what, I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to
Right.
make this part of my lifestyle. And I think it really becomes a decision of who you are in terms of a person and your identity as somebody who doesn't even consume it. It's not even an option, right?
Right.
So that's I guess that's the sad truth
That's
about food.
the good news and the bad news. The reason why my wife and I went 100% gluten and dairy free, other than butter, I love butter. It doesn't seem to
Yeah,
bother me. Was our baby girl got eczema, and she was exclusively breastfed. But we noticed that when we went 100% gluten and dairy free, the eczema just started to disappear. And
yeah,
so it's pretty much contained. It's about 90% contained to what it used to be. But she was born cesarean section, so she doesn't have the beneficial bacteria that are associated with natural childbirth and so on and so forth. So there was a lot of things there. So you mentioned gluten is one of those ones where we kind of have to kind of buy in and see if it really does help us or not. But you also mentioned that some things you can kind of kick your heels up with. So what
mhm.
about sugar? What about alcohol? What about all those fun things that we like to live with in life?
Yeah. I mean, my downfall is sugar, and I would clump in bread to that category as well, just because I was so conditioned to having it all the time.
Right.
So with sugar, the problem is that it's often associated with wheat. In not all the time, but traditionally in baked goods, there's
Right.
always some kind of wheat in that. But the good news is that there's a ton of amazing recipes out there. If you just search online for gluten-free whatever, cupcakes, muffins, breads, cakes, there's a ton of amazing recipes based on almond flour, coconut flour, some really good things that you can enjoy. Sugar, again, it's one of those things where arguably it's people say it's the worst ingredient or the worst nutrient, if you can call it that, with respect to our health, and for a couple reasons, because it obviously does that stuff to our blood sugar, because it increases the acidity in our blood, and that poses problems for potential cancer developments, stripping calcium from bones. So, I'm a realist as much as I'm an idealist. So I really espouse moderation, because I think if you do something where you're like, I hate this, I can't stand doing this, what's the point, right? I mean, the best diet is the diet that you don't know you're on, right? So if you can
Right.
do something where you enjoy it and then you allow yourself a bit of flex to kind of nourish that inner child, whether that be through some kind of treat, that's okay. I mean, I really do think it's okay, and there's better options than others, right? So if you wanted to have a cupcake, you could have a gluten-free cupcake, and honestly, if you use almond flour, the cupcake actually tastes 1,000 times better because it's a lot more moist. So it's just a matter of trying that stuff out and being exposed to it. So alcohol, not many redeeming qualities, but the reality is that if we're going out and we want to celebrate stuff, or we're just having a nice glass of wine, again, there could be worse things. I mean, if you're doing that every single day on a on a very high volume and high frequency, that's a problem. But I think everything in moderation. So especially with wine, it's the recommended is 1 glass per day in terms of cardiovascular health. But as soon as you have 2 glasses, it becomes a risk factor. So it's,
There's a tipping
it's
point there somewhere.
yeah. So I think you have to see what's. I mean, over the holiday season and stuff, we tend to drink more, we tend to eat more, but I think that's part of life, right? We go through these ebbs and flows, or we like to enjoy ourselves, and I don't want to be the person to say you can't ever do that again.
Sure.
But I try to empower people with the knowledge so that they can make those decisions for themselves when they are willing and ready to do so, knowing the consequences and knowing other alternatives. So yeah.
That's good, Yuri. I'm happy that you said you like to empower people with knowledge. Obviously, a very intelligent guy. But no, we talking on this call, we can't go out there and make you put the fork down or bake you some gluten-free muffins. You guys got to do that for yourselves. And when Yuri said that they make some really good gluten-free snacks, he's telling the absolute truth. If you guys haven't opened up a gluten-free dessert cookbook and made something from there, it really tastes no different. And in fact, for me, the harder part about going gluten and dairy-free was not the gluten. You can make rice noodles and you can do all this different stuff, and it was the dairy, right? I can't have my precious Alfredo anymore. And so, and ice
Actually,
cream.
what? You can. We make a really good Alfredo sauce based out of cauliflower.
Oh, all right. I'll have to
And
check that one out.
I'm telling you, if you have friends over for dinner and I'll have to send you the recipe.
Yeah.
They won't even. It's trippy. They won't even know what's going on if you don't tell them. It's awesome.
You just saved my world, Yuri.
Yeah. There you go.
So let's empower people with this education that we were just talking about, all right? I want to dig into what the topic of this call is, which is cleansing the body, right? There's a lot of people talking about cleanses and detox diets and so on and so forth, and I've personally experimented a lot with this, and I've done some cleanses where at the end I felt amazing, my skin looked great, I had so much energy, fat was melting off my body, I didn't even notice, I didn't even want to lose any weight, and I was. And then I've done a detox where I felt like absolute shit for like a week straight, and I'm like, crapping my pants and things like that. So let's talk about kind of both of those, how you approach detoxing, because that's really where your line of expertise lies.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of them. Again, I got into cleansing because I needed to kind of heal my own issues. So it's funny because I have a real passion and background in high performance conditioning. And I was a strength conditioning coach at the University of Toronto for 7 years as well. And taking these principles over to a bunch of elite college athletes is very interesting. So it took a couple years for them to start to adopt some of it, but it was really cool. The reason I got into cleansing is because I didn't really find that there were many good options out there. It was like, okay, I can go pick up a detox kit and open up a package of pills and hope for the best, or I could do some kind of lemonade. Spicy lemonade cleanse where I do nothing but drink maple syrup and lemon water for 10 days and then purge everything out of my intestines with a saltwater flush, which is completely natural, right? And I'm looking at all these options and I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then and as a rule of thumb, anything you see happening in Hollywood, you should probably avoid, right? Because they're doing extreme stuff where they're doing stuff over a weekend and it's obviously on the front page of whatever magazine. And people think that that's the way to do it, and unfortunately, it's not. So what I started to get into is looking, because really, when I went back to school and studied holistic nutrition, I just said, you know what? If I can, just by cleaning up my diet, if I started to see all these amazing changes, well, that's pretty cool. And then I started to learn more about how the body works physiologically, and like our liver is our main detoxification organ. It requires specific nutrients at different phases of its detoxification process. So if you're doing something like the master cleanse or some kind of deprivational fast for an extended period of time, you're obviously going to lose weight. It's simple calories. You could do the Coca-Cola diet, you could do the orange juice diet, whatever it is you want. As long as you're consuming fewer calories, you will lose weight. But what are you doing to your health in the process?
Right.
So with those types of approaches, you're not giving your body, your liver, or the cells in the trillions of cells in your body the nutrients that they require to effectively detoxify, because they're doing that 24/7, and we don't even know, we're not aware of that. But they need specific nutrients, whether it be glutathione or vitamin C or specific sulfur-containing compounds that are prominently found in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli or Brussels sprouts. If we're not giving our body those nutrients, well, where's it going to get them from, right? So as I started to look into the power of foods, I started to realize, like, well, why don't we just consider every meal as a potential way of cleansing or toxifying our body, right? So if you go to McDonald's, you're making one choice. If you have a salad, you make another choice. So I like to approach cleansing in the sense that it's not something you do for 10 days or 14 days or 30 days once a year or once in your life. Although, in a more focused manner, it definitely does help. But every time you take a bite of something, think about, is this cleansing me? Is this kind of a toxic, kind of junky type of food, or is this a food that's going to support my body's natural process of detoxification and health. And that's really the way that I like to get people to think about this stuff, because what you do on a daily basis is going to be far more important than what you do for a couple days once a year. We have a lot of stories of people that I've known who've done different things. I have a friend of mine who was a waiter at a breakfast restaurant, so she never really ate that well. And a couple years ago, she decided she wanted to do the Master Cleanse. So she had a lot of willpower going into it. So she did it for 10 days, lost about 20 pounds, and she felt awesome. But then on day 11, she was like, well, what do I eat now? And she ended up eating exactly the way she did before. And so within about a week, she regained all of that weight, and she was no further ahead than she was when she started. So my question is, why do that if you're not going to be doing things that are sustainable? If you're going to go back to square one. And a lot of research has shown that going up and down with your weights over and over again gives you, an increased chance of continuing to struggle with those weight issues. And also, one study showed you have a 30% increase in heart disease because of that. So that's not something I advise people to do. So I'm thinking, why, or how do we get people to think about just doing things sustainably, right? Do something every single day that can move you in the right direction. Right. And for me, that's the ultimate type of cleansing.
What is the top foods that you consider that people need to eat more of in order to cleanse their bodies?